Thank you for the survey today. Please note that the footage could be out of position, out of alignment. Sorry about that. I've just put it together in rough format. What I'm going to do is pull together pieces, add it to surveys from other properties so you can see your property in the context of other properties, and likewise the data loggers. Please send me the data not this coming weekend but next weekend, and I will then pull them all together. Note that some of the conclusions evolve as the survey goes along. Have a listen to the survey now. So it's a square bay. It's purpose built with two separate entrances. You can see the band of hygroscopic salts, which is very common in central London from the burning of coal and or from animals. And that's almost certainly part of the issue. I think I can see some past damp proofing treatment, which is obviously not a good thing. Yeah, so it's, do you see the little dots at the base of the wall? It's been damp proof, which unfortunately increases the risk of moisture because it means that the brickwork, the plaster has been replaced with an impermeable plaster, which reduces the absorption of moisture. I'm going to put a hygrometer in the subfloor void to find out if there is an issue or indeed there is rising damp. You'll have high humidity if there is rising damp. To start with, there's mould down there, and that indicates to me that there's excess vapour. You only get mould where relative humidity goes high. You can't have mould where you've got hygroscopic salts, so you can't have rising damp where you've got mould, so that completely excludes rising damp. You also get this white here. It's either mould, I think it's probably mould actually, but sometimes you get calcium sulfate crystallized salts which come from the plaster, generally from condensation. So those are the main things I'm seeing here. There's that white there, might be the same. Oh yeah, so the plaster, you'll normally see a disturbance, you can feel it around there. It's about a metre off the ground, and that's where you get the impermeable plaster from damp proofers like Kenwood, and they replace the normal plaster with the impermeable plaster. You'll often get a damp zone around there because the wall can't breathe, it can't evaporate out water, so the water can get trapped in there. The water will be coming from condensation, but condensation is drawn down through gravity. That's why you'll normally get it at the bottom of the ground, and that's why the floor, that's why it appears to be rising, but it's actually more accurately described as falling damp, but it wouldn't have such good marketing. And then we'll have a look at the other rooms. So looking in other rooms, the thick blackout curtains with the radiator underneath. Interesting, I'll have a look there better. Heating appears to be off, which might explain why it's damp at the base of the walls as well. Interesting, there's a thing that blocks the vent, which has obviously collapsed, but it was there for a long time, so they wouldn't have had good ventilation.
But it's open.
The kitchen extractor fan doesn't go out, so the kitchen, well, it's not even running, I don't think. Seems to have blown, oh, there you go, it's missing. But even when it was working, it doesn't go out because you can't see the ducting from there outwards, and so it's coming out the top. So it's recycling. Any cooking steam will just be recycled and won't do any good at all. The bathroom has a vent, but it's a passive vent, meaning that unless there's airflow drawing vapour out, it won't be sufficient. And typically in rental properties, they'll just have the door open and the vapour from the bathroom will drift into the rest of the house. So it's got all the hallmarks of excess vapour causing condensation. This is an outbuilding. It's obviously quite damp there, and we'll look to see what's causing that, but it's an external building, so not really part of the survey. So you've got subfloor ventilation there, and it looks reasonably good. It's a healthy sign. I suspect at some stage there's been water overflowing the gutter there. And if I look up there, it looks like it's, oh, you can see a bit of greenery there, which suggests that it's a bit blocked. No major issue, just needs to be cleared. It's a sort of annual task. The way this is operating isn't ideal, but I guess that looks okay. There's a vent there, and there's brick that's painted. You're starting to see some damage to the brick. It needs to be repainted with the same type of brick to keep it consistent. Dehumidifier, but it's way too small. You need to have 20 litres per day with a property like this. The bathroom has got a fan, but it's mechanical, so it's got one of these things and it isn't working. So that's one of the reasons why you've got damp issues in the property. So the humidity in the flat is 63.6, 14 degrees centigrade, so dew point of 8.1. And the subfloor is 1385, 86. So that's about 10 degrees centigrade dew point, which is slightly higher than the dew point of the air. So there's a bit of vapour, but that's probably because it has been raining recently. I've slightly raised the subfloor just to see if I can see anything. There are no signs of rot there. It looks okay there. So the property is 80% and 14.7. I'm going to put this into the subfloor void. See how that is. So what we're seeing here is it's cold from this point onwards because the front door is this side. That's why you're getting mould there, and almost certainly there was a cupboard or there was something blocking the movement of air from the radiator. So that's why you're getting the heat loss and the mould there. It's caused by excess vapour, made worse by heat loss from the outside and lack of airflow from the radiator. So we're getting a bit of a ridge here. Now I don't know, but that there, you can feel it. That could be damp proofer's ridge and causing condensation. So that's from replacement of the original plaster, the damp proofer's plaster. So this is the effect of past damp proofing treatment. So normal levels of vapour, this is using radio waves and it detects dampness deep within the wall. And as you go down, you're seeing we suddenly hit 999, and that's where the damp, and that is where the damp proofing treatment is, because what's happening is the vapours going in is getting trapped behind the impermeable plaster, and you're getting this ridge of damp proofers, and then it will go down to normal levels again. And then it will probably go up again as we go towards the end, because that's gravity there that's drawing the vapour down. It's less obvious on this one, but that's the effect of damp proofing. So if you want to dry out the property, you really need to use dehumidifier, ventilation and airflow. I wouldn't get rid of the damp proofing treatment, but just recognise that it causes damp. Damp proofing is against rising damp. Rising damp comes from groundwater, that's the water under the water table. But in London, groundwater is pumped out, so there is no risk of rising damp in London, and therefore anything that has been damp proofed in the past shouldn't have been damp proofed, and any company that's making profit from damp proofing shouldn't be doing it. But there's no regulation of it in this country, and there's a lot of misunderstanding. The majority of what people think is caused by rising damp or hygroscopic salts that primarily come from historic animals, horses in particular, or from coal, from the and I don't see examples, but I have other surveys where you can see examples of hygroscopic salts around chimney breasts, and we can see the hygroscopic salts on the outside. So there's a good chance that it was mistaken for rising damp, and that's because of obviously in the old days people didn't really understand how it was generated. But you can't have mould and hygroscopic salts in the same place. So you've got mould at the base of the wall, you know you can't have rising damp. So there's woodworm here. This is historic woodworm. You can tell that because the holes have been exposed because it's been stripped back. So normal woodworm, this is a common furniture beetle, Anobium punctatum in Latin, and you get lots of little holes, but if it hadn't been stripped, you wouldn't see all these tunnels, and that's the larvae that are growing across it. It only damages the softwood, not the hardwood in the centre of the tree, and so it makes very little difference, and there's no real damage. It's part of the patina of an old property, what you would expect to see in pretty much every old property. There's no reason to spray it, but if you wanted to, what you do is use permethrin, 0.2% permethrin, over the course of 3 years, returning annually. But it's not necessary to do it. It's only in one small area anyway. I see it just in that one small area. It's historic. It probably goes back to the Second World War, where people weren't drying their houses properly, weren't heating them because of obviously the Second World War. So this timber is loose, and we're going to have a look at it underneath. If the woodworm was active, you would have frass, and we'll have a look. The more important thing is to look for rot, which we'll do. But I'm looking. So this is the floorboard that has woodworm on the top, and if it were active, you'd see frass underneath, which I don't see. There's the woodworm on top. This one. So there's woodworm there. Let's look at that. There is a certain amount of dampness there. Got good air vent, which is important. This is with the damp meter. We know it's damp up to the damp proofer's ridge, and then probably similar there, and then so it's damper here than it is on the other side. But we know there's mould, and you can see there's condensation there, so it must be poor airflow that would account for that. Let's try. That's the other side of the damp. area that we already know about. No, that's dry there. Internal wall, that's dry. Dry there. Dry there. Okay, so it's really just that one corner. Dry there. We'll see if there's any hygroscopic salts around here. A bit damp around there. You can actually see it there. And there, it's because of the effect that a fireplace has. And then almost certainly here as well. Yeah, so this is obviously from lack of ventilation for the kitchen and bathroom. But it's dry on this wall. She wouldn't be if it was rising there. And bathroom, because there's no ventilation, this manual vent isn't working. About fireplaces is historically they were used for burning fuel, so you get lots of ventilation and heat. So it didn't need to have specific, there was no specific concern in the past, but what you have is you've got half that goes into the subfloor. So the subfloor is the area underneath the floorboards, and there's a lot more brickwork to absorb the moisture. It gets cold around the hearth, so you're liable to get much more heat loss and therefore condensation. But you also got the issue of hygroscopic salts. But you can see the dampness up to there. You can see, you want to try and see that whether it's a shadow or dampness, but you can see it's damp up to there. And likewise in the underneath there. So this is the water meter for both properties. It's got an analog dial in the middle that isn't turning, which means that you can't have a leak. So that's really good news. So we're just going to clear that. I think this could be a bit of a problem. Water backing up into there. That should work better now. So I would say that there is a bit of a drainage problem there, which obviously fixed now. So there's a small escape of water around the stopcock, which is accounts for slightly raised humidity in the subfloor void. So really that needs to be dealt with, but it isn't registering as a change on the outside, suggesting that it's very small, but any moisture in the subfloor is clearly going to have an impact. You often have issues with these front, slight rot there, but nothing major. It's looking under the floor to the front. There's a historic rot, but it's not doing anything. It's the neighbour's side. Small amount of rot there, but that's fairly superficial. So I'm just taking a sample of the salts from here. Test for calcium nitrate. reason I believe these are hygroscopic salts is that you've got dampness that's showing quite clearly at the base of the wall, and it's in an area that is next to the chimney breast. I'm also seeing them there and over there and over in the corner there. So this is under the radiator in the dining area. We're going to have a look. The ground feels relatively dry. We're going to have to look back on ourselves. I'm looking for rot more than anything else. And I'm going to measure the subfloor humidity. So a simple way to find out whether those are hygroscopic salts or whether it's dampness that's just evaporating. So hygroscopic salts are in dynamic equilibrium. They're not a source of more water, they're just permanently there. They're not evaporating. Well, they're evaporating and condensing at the same rate. So I've got a hygrometer which shows 66.6% at 14.5%. So if that was evaporating, it would increase the surface relative humidity, and you can calculate that by taking the temperature and working out and it should be 100% surface relative humidity. If you've got visible signs of dampness, which I can see there are visible signs of dampness. So on the computer, I'll just calculate it. So we're looking at the subfloor relative humidity. It's 80, so it's consistent throughout, 83%. So just back into the kitchen, you can see, you can see the dampness. It's visible there. The solution for the mould is to use anti-mould spray. Costs about £10-20, and then increase the ventilation. Think about the insulation, but the real cost is the ventilation, and you want to replace the bathroom extractor fan. Have a continuous flow bathroom extractor fan such as Ventaaxia, and also I would duct out the vent from the kitchen out, and I suspect the vent will need to be replaced. So you're probably talking about £1,000 in total to solve this dampness, and that you just need Zinsser cover stain painted on that. It's an oil base block. Does the same job as damp-proof as slurry, but it's a lot more effective and cheaper. And in fact, damp-proof as slurry often causes dampness. So I would also look at the stopcock. I think there's a very slight leak on it. I think you should have a plumber look at it, and I get the plumber to just double check that the central heating isn't leaking, and that there is no leak on the mains water, but I don't believe there is, except for that stopcock, which is around this area here. So you're getting a bit of extra vapour in this area.